Hey guys, Harrison1 back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to episode 10 and the season finale of the Online Racer for Formula 1 2012. Formula 1 2012 online gameplay featuring interesting topics revolving around Formula 1 or the gameplay in general. And well, this is an interesting episode. Like I said, this is the last episode I'm going to do of this current season. This series is taking a break, mainly because I'm going to be pretty congested coming through for the next month or so, with Around the Corner, with Grid, with MotoGP coverage coming very soon. I've got a MotoGP season preview coming along in I think on Friday or something like that. I'm gonna be doing a MotoGP season preview, breaking that down, and basically there might not be room for a series like this unless something big comes up to talk about in the F1 world. And because of Red Bull's big recent team orders incident in Malaysia, I thought this would be an ideal series finale to have a longer commentary talking about the dynamic of Red Bull in general right now and all the different avenues and options and things that are worth mentioning to do with that, because obviously the last time I mentioned this was my Malaysia Grand Prix review and I didn't really have the time to go into that in depth because it was only about 6 minutes or so long. Now I've got an open book to talk about for as long as I please. And warning, yes, I know, you probably know I'm a Red Bull fan. If you've disliked this video or you're going to dislike this video purely because of that, stop watching. Seriously, it's going to do you no favours. Yes, I am a Red Bull fan, but I'd like to think I tend to be objective when it comes to reporting things and being opinionated. If you're not comfortable with that, I highly recommend you don't watch this video. At the end of the day, this is only my opinion. I'm going to try and use some facts and incidents to back that up. If you disagree, that's okay. Talk to me about it in the comments. I know you guys normally do anyway. So, yeah. The situation is an interesting one. I mean, there's so many ways you can break it down. And the way we want to break it down is the overall dynamic of the team right now. I think Malaysia and what it did was that it showed a different side to Sebastian Vettel's, one that we haven't really seen before in terms of, to me, as a fan of the guy and as an observer, Sebastian Vettel comes across to me like a good guy. He's very smart, very witty, he's very good with English, knows a lot about British humour and how that works. I mean, his Top Gear interview says a lot about him as a person. Very, very happy-go-lucky kind of guy. But what that Malaysia win kind of showed is that underneath the smiles and you know, the funny references and things like that, he also has a very ruthless side to him. And a lot of people obviously have attacked Vettel and, you know, said that he was wrong to break team orders and, you know, it hurt the dynamic of a team and things like that. My whole take on the situation was this: teams in Formula 1 is a term that isn't really representative of what actually happens in F1. And I say this in terms of, basically, it's only a team when it's convenient for them to be a team. Because, let's be real here, it's two individuals. It's a team of two individuals. That's what David Coulthard said on Twitter, and I think he hit the nail on the head. It's a team of two individuals, and I think it's only really a team when it's in their best interests. Like, for example, when Ferrari had Alonso pass Massa a couple of years ago in Germany. That was a prime example of team orders swaying towards Alonso's favour. And obviously the end of last season was another prime example, like the Massa gearbox tampering. It's only really a team when it's convenient for them to be a team and it directly affects them. That's my theory, in the sense of it's only a team when it's convenient for them. And, you know, personally, I'm never going to attack a driver for wanting to try and win a race, because that is the ultimate aim. Your ultimate aim is to win. You don't drive for a second place, you drive to win. And the thing is, what didn't help Vettel was that he at first said it was a genuine mistake. You know, he didn't get what happened, and then in the press conference afterwards, after he had a chat with his team, it was more like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I didn't deserve to win, Webber deserved to win, blah, blah, blah. So he'd gone back on himself in order to, you know, maybe try and save face, you know, and, you know, try and mend some of the team's broken or damaged reputation as it was. I don't think it really worked or anything like that, but that's clearly what had happened or what had gone on. He'd made a claim that it was a genuine accident, then admitted it was on purpose and said, look, I'm sorry. Like I said, behind the overall happy-go-lucky dynamic of Vettel lies a serious, ruthless racer. And, you know, again, like I said, people wanted to attack him for it, and especially when he apologised. I think people who are impartial or unbiased on Sebastian are going to take that apology at face value, admit it was a genuine mistake, and just move on. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy's still only 25. He's still young. He's still one of the younger drivers in the grid, despite his monumental success. And I don't think every driver in the book was that mature at 25. I mean, wasn't Michael Schumacher ploughing his car into the side of Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve by that age anyway? So it's not like this is the first time something like this has happened to a young driver or done something that, you know, breaks the ethical boundaries of the sport, you could say. Those who are against Vettel, which I know there's definitely more people like that, are going to nitpick and, you know, try and psychoanalyze these things to try and use something to use as a weapon against him. That's just how Formula 1 is. Vettel is probably the most disliked driver Formula 1 has had in quite some time, maybe even ever. And that's not all down to Vettel's fault. Something people have got to bear in mind. There's a lot of new fans in Formula 1 who've only been watching for the last 5 years or so. There's a lot of younger fans who are tuning in, and there's a lot of fans who didn't watch the Schumacher era when he was so dominant and he did so many things that hurt his legacy and tainted the rules and, you know, changed the dynamic of how the sport was managed. For example, him hitting Damon Hill to win his first world title, or hitting Jacques Villeneuve to try and get his second. And was it third? I think it was his third, actually. But yeah, it's not the first time that's happened. And I think also something to bear in mind as well is that social media didn't exist when Schumacher was around. The internet was barely around, so there wasn't really places people could talk about it besides maybe their own four walls or down the pub with a few mates. Now that social media is on the internet, we are closer to the sport than ever before in terms of coverage, in terms of, you know, what these drivers are putting out there to the public and how information is being spread. So that's a key factor as well. But I think Vettel is probably the most disliked guy in Formula 1 as well, mainly because of that, also because many people say his success is down to Adrian Newey's car designs, which of course is a factor. Newey's designed 10 championship winners, but to me, in Formula 1, you need the perfect combination of driver and car to be a success. You can't have one and not the other. I mean, look at Lewis Hamilton and McLaren. He could have won 2 or 3 world titles, but he only won 1 because his McLaren car let him down. We all know that pound for pound, Hamilton's one of the best in the world. You know, top 3 at absolute worst. But the McLaren cars let him down. Look at last year. If McLaren had a decent car, and a car that didn't have all those retirements towards the end of the year, Hamilton would have had a real chance of winning that year's world title. You can't have one and not have the other. And I mean, again, you can't have a great driver and have a car that's not up to snuff. For example, Alonso at Renault. You know, Alonso is an elite driver, again, one of the best of all time. The Renault car, he was in that 1 year where Nelson Piquet was with the team, wasn't good enough either. So he can't drag that car up there either. And you can't have the best car and win the world title either. Look at Mark Webber. If the car was so great, how come Webber is constantly behind Vettel all the time? It's not just because of team orders. So you can't just necessarily say that a great car will automatically put any old dude in the car and they'll take it to a win. Doesn't work that way. In my idea, you need both. That's how I make of the whole Vettel situation. And, you know, we praise drivers for the most part for, you know, being ruthless and being aggressive. And that is the key trait to why people liked Ayrton Senna so much, and the key trait of why people liked Michael Schumacher so much as a driver, because they were ruthless and, you know, they did what it took to win the race. Why is that different to what Vettel did in that race? That's just how I see it. And not to mention, flipping the coin for the second here. Let's go to Mark Webber. Mark Webber has been sympathised and you know, has been propped up by the majority of F1 fans on the internet I see, and by people in general, as being that unlucky second guy. I mean, when we think about second drivers in F1, the easy assumption is Felipe Massa, mainly because of Ferrari's strong team initiative towards having one elite driver, you know, put all your eggs in one basket. They've had that for about, what, 20 years now or so, ever since Schumacher signed with them. It was Schumacher and Barrichello, and then it was, as soon as Kimi Raikkonen was signed for Ferrari, Schumacher was gone. Then it became Raikkonen and Massa, then it became, you know, Alonso and Massa, which we see now. So that's just a Ferrari dynamic. It's clearly one that puts all the eggs in one basket. But Mark Webber in general, I think, has been sympathised with a lot in the F1 community because he is that nearly guy. He's almost won 2 world titles with that Red Bull team, but he's on both occasions he's lost out because Vettel's been slightly better. And you know, ever since the Turkey crash in 2010 and obviously incidents like this, people are going to naturally sympathise with Mark, which to a degree I can completely understand because Mark Webber is a great driver in his own right. Is he an elite driver? Maybe. That's your opinion to decide whether he is or not. But again, naturally, people are going to look at Mark and think, oh no, he's the victim because he's been robbed by Red Bull's team orders. People need to understand it's not quite as simple as that. And also, it's not like Mark Webber's never broken team orders himself. Have we forgotten Brazil 2012, you know, where Webber wanted to fight Vettel despite the fact Webber had nothing to gain from doing so, and Vettel was coming off the crash and wanting to obviously get high enough up the grid to get enough points to seal the championship? You know, not to mention Silverstone 2012 as well, where he broke team orders and ended up winning the race. So I think a lot of people having a sympathetic image of Mark Webber being the totally innocent, unlucky but plucky and gamey Australian, I think to a degree can be misconstrued because it's not like Mark Webber's done it himself. I think all those fans being biased towards Webber are being slightly hypocritical here because Webber's done the same thing to manipulate team orders in his favour. So it's not like Vettel is completely guilty here because this has happened before. Don't get me wrong. Did Webber deserve to win that race? Yeah, probably. He was better on his tyres than Vettel was in Malaysia, but in my eyes, they should have just let the two race. Why is their team orders even taking place in the second Grand Prix of a season? It's not like we're in race 15, for example, where the title could be directly influenced by a result like this. It wasn't. It was race 2. We have no idea what's going to happen for the rest of the season yet. It's just, you know, it's unfortunate, but, you know, people are going to call me biased because Vettel's my favourite driver, and of course, I embrace that. I mean, bring it on in the comments, I say, because I will defend the guy because I think he's been unfairly attacked on many occasions when it's not that simple. And there's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, Newey's a success and whatnot, and we know Webber being the sympathetic poor victim in this situation. Not necessarily. People are acting like Mark Webber is a nobody in this sport. Mark Webber has almost won 2 world titles. He's been a perennial top contender. Is that all down to the car? Or is it because Mark Webber's a better driver? You tell me. But it's one of those things where now the dynamic of the team has changed. It's clear that Vettel and Webber don't like each other. And I think that's mainly due to Webber feeling like he's the victim. You know, he's like, you know, saying things really like, oh, not bad for the number 2 driver. He's clearly embraced his role as a number 2. He's clearly using that to send some messages to the Red Bull team whenever he can take advantage of a situation. And, you know, on the, let's be honest, rare occasion he outperforms Vettel over the course of a weekend, he'll make sure we all know about that. So, again, is it completely one-sided? Maybe, maybe not. But looking at how the team stands now, it's an interesting dynamic because not every team gets along. I mean, look at Hamilton and Alonso. They didn't get along when they were together, and McLaren thought they brought together the dream team. You know, at the time, probably the 2 best drivers in Formula 1. So to bring them together in one team and have them challenge for a world title, which eventually neither of them won, didn't make it look good. Sebastian Vettel is clearly the centerpiece of Red Bull. We know this. He's a big star. He's a massive celebrity back in Germany. He's beloved over there. And because Red Bull are an Austrian team, you know, it helps to have a Central European guy as the headliner. It makes sense from a marketing standpoint. Not to mention, of course, the guy can drive a fair bit. And Helmut Marko and Mark Webber have never seen eye to eye. The more interesting dynamic is Mark Webber. Like, what does he do? People are saying, oh, Webber might quit the team early or he might jump ship to Ferrari. People, there's a reason Mark Webber didn't join Ferrari at the end of last season. He was offered a one-year deal. I think it was around Silverstone last season when Mark Webber was offered the second seat at Ferrari. But you've got to realise, why would Mark Webber switch from being a number 2 guy in Red Bull to a number 2 team a number 2 driver at Ferrari in a team that's not as good? Because the team would still lean towards Alonso, I'm sure. Why would they lean towards Webber, thinking that he's better than Alonso? Because he's not. I think 95% of people in the comments would agree that Alonso is a better driver than Webber. So why would Why would Webber go there? He's not going to be the number 1 guy, and the team is worse than Red Bull. So if he wants to win, he has to realise and know that joining Ferrari will not help him win a world title, because when the chips are down, they'll lean towards Fernando Alonso. Simple as that. So Webber's in a really difficult catch-22 in the sense of he can stay, know he's the number 2 guy and not be happy with management because, like I said, he and Helmut Marko, head of driver development, don't get along, and he knows that Marko doesn't see him in his plans. Webber doesn't really care about that anymore, but it's all out there on the table. Or does he join another team purely to get out of that situation? Because the thing is, if he joins another team, it's not going to be because they're a championship contender. Mercedes have their 2 drivers. Hamilton is the centerpiece. Rosberg is a great driver and probably a very solid number 2, even if you want to call him that, because I think Mercedes are going to have an equal driver system. McLaren have their guy in Jenson Button. He's a great marketer and great face of the team. Replacing him for a guy who was older wouldn't make any sense. Not to mention they have a young starlet in Sergio Perez they can groom into the team. Maybe he can be the guy after Button hangs it up, which I think is imminent. Could be as early as the end of this season because Button's constantly teased retirement. So it could be as early as that for all we know. So, again, I don't see him fitting in the McLaren garage. I don't see him fitting in the Mercedes garage. Lotus have Kimi Räikkönen, and Kimi Räikkönen is one of the best drivers in the world. And Romain Grosjean brings a lot of money to the sport with sponsorships, and while controversial, has got a lot of raw ability. So, again, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. And those are the perennial top 5 teams in Formula 1. Like, the next best team off that's probably Force India. And while the history of that team is up in the air, especially if Paul di Resta has another kind of mediocre year, Force India are not in the position to be challenging for titles. So anything below the top 5 teams I've just mentioned, you're looking at teams that aren't going to be contenders and have no chance of being contenders unless they get serious cash injections and development teams going. So Webber's kind of in a catch-22. Does he stay and get abused or leave and not be a contender? Either way, it doesn't seem pretty, especially for a guy who's 36 years old, the oldest guy in the Formula 1 grid these days, and a guy who probably realises and knows that his window is closing. So, you know, what next for Webber? For Vettel will just keep going. I mean, again, he's Red Bull's guy. He's going to have the Red Bull team behind him. Until he decides to either leave, a team throws so much money at him he can't say no, or something big happens where Vettel really does throw the team under the bus. Because this wasn't an example of that what happened in Malaysia. It's not an example that's going to break Red Bull and destroy it from the inside. It was 2 guys fighting over a race win. Nobody got hurt physically. Nobody lost any points. It was an ego thing more than anything else. And it's sure something that, you know, Christian Horner, who is a very good team manager, could easily get under control if he really wanted to. It's a crazy situation. And besides that, even if they cut Mark Webber, they have plenty of guys they could bring through from, because remember they're lined up with Toro Rosso, and their driver development program could easily get a guy in the team like Sebastian Buemi, or they can look down to one of the 2 current Toro Rosso drivers of Daniel Ricciardo or Jean-Eric Vergne. So it's not like Webber is a key asset to the team if Red Bull really didn't want him to be there. I've always said as well that Vettel's got a chance of joining Ferrari, because I mean it was heavily hinted towards the end of last season that eventually Vettel will drive for Ferrari, because you know Ferrari want to have another elite German who can speak English in their car, who they can market. Because let's be real here, Ferrari is still the most prestigious team in Formula 1, mainly off the back of Schumacher's success. Why wouldn't Ferrari want to continue that, especially with a guy who, in Vettel, who I think is 6 years younger than Alonso? You know, Vettel's still only 25 at the end of the day. There's a whole heap of different dynamics to this, and of course, I would love to hear what you guys take on the whole thing is. There's so many things you could possibly comment on here. Team orders, what you think of Vettel as a driver, Webber as a driver, as a person. You know, the dynamic of the concept of team orders. You know, what does Webber do if he leaves, so on and so forth. You have 500 characters in the comments. Talk to me. Let's get some debate going. Embrace debate. Get talking. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to get a ton of likes if this video goes down well. If you've disagreed with me, please don't thumbs this video down or flag it or anything like that. Talk to me in the comments. We can debate this like gentlemen, rather than sending, you know, disliking comments just because you don't agree with me. At the end of the day, it's my opinion piece. It's okay to disagree with people on the internet, you know. I'm just saying. Anywho, I've been Harrison101. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.